Today, I want to talk to you about rape and rape culture. We have a major problem in this country. 1 in 5 women is a victim of violent sexual assault, according to the National Institute of Justice and Department of Defense. So this means that in a room of 100 women, 20 of us are victims of violent sexual assault. And this does not include unwanted touch. A breast grazed, a butt grabbed, a hand on your lap, a body too close in an elevator, a bra snapped. Every single adult woman I know has at least one of these stories. And women aren't the only victims. 1 in 7 men is a victim of violent sexual assault, which means on your average high school football team, there are 7 victims of violent sexual assault, which seems impossible until we understand just how silent this crime is. How does this happen? How does rape culture propagate? It is an implication of people being raised without the understanding that everyone is in charge of their own body. You see, the problem is in the culture. It's how we build our rules. It's the way we raise our children. It's the stories we tell. We inadvertently teach people that they are not in charge of their own bodies. Let's start with children's stories. I have 2 tiny girls at home, and they have a serious thing for princesses. But I often worry about what these pretty ladies are teaching my girls. You see, in Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, the prince comes across a woman he does not know who is asleep. And he decides that the correct behavior is to kiss her. This does not make the prince a creeper. Instead, it makes him the hero. In Cinderella, she gives her prince all indications that she does not want to talk to him anymore, literally running away as fast as she can. And the prince chases her. And this makes him charming. You see, in all 3 of these stories, the man is in charge of the woman's body. It is valorous and romantic to decide what a woman wants. It makes you the hero. Lest you think I'm being oversensitive, how many of you have ever seen a movie where a woman says no? No to a date, to coffee sometime, to a kiss, to a dance. And by the end of the film, she has changed her mind, mainly because the man has pursued her. Can't think of one? The Notebook, Say Anything, You've Got Mail, the entire Fast and the Furious franchise. All of these movies have scenes where no does not mean no, and ignoring a woman's desire is what gets you the girl in the end. Even Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare wrote in scenes where no did not mean no. And it isn't just our movies. Romantic songs are rife with the idea that no doesn't mean no, and you should continue pursuing her. I'm not just talking about the creepy blurred lines. Recently, Disclosure put out Latch with the lyrics, "If there are boundaries, I will try to knock them down," sung completely unironically and held up as some grand romantic gesture. But before we ever expose our children for romantic relationships, we expose them to their relationship with their own body. I took a hard look at what was happening at my house, and I did not like what I saw. You see, I was inadvertently teaching my own children that they weren't in charge of their own body. When I make them wear whatever it is I want them to wear, instead of what they want to wear, I teach them I'm in charge of their body. Now, I have toddlers at home, so I understand that sometimes their choices aren't real choices, okay? The pink princess dress has to be washed sometimes, especially when there's been an accident. And everybody has to wear pants to the grocery store, okay? That's just a life rule. But are there times when I'm not letting them choose when I could? I teach my kids they are not in charge of their own bodies when I make them hug relatives they are uncomfortable hugging, or when I don't stop the kiss even after the kid has said no kisses. when I make them play Anna to their sisters Elsa, even when they don't want to. As our kids get older, they play on the elementary school playground. And there they learn that they aren't in charge of their own body. Boys tease girls, they pull their hair, they call them names, and the girls are told to get used to it. Boys will be boys, and it means that they like you. Girls chase boys, they knock them down and kiss them against their will, and the boys are supposed to be flattered by it. In both of these situations, the kids learn that they aren't in charge of what happens to their own bodies. Instead, they have to follow social norms that other people impose on them. When the kids hit junior high and high school, the dress code comes down. As a high school teacher, I understand that our kids need to understand what professional dress is. But I don't like the way we're communicating dress code. Ladies, you need to cover yourselves up. You need to not wear tight yoga pants because you are a distraction to the boys. See, the girls learn that their bodies are dangerous, that they need to be aware of other people's reactions because they are in charge of those reactions. And the boys learn that they can't help it, that their brains are victims to their own bodies. All the time, we teach adult males that they are victims to their bodies. When we say things like, boys will be boys, he couldn't help it, he was a man, what did you expect? He has needs. All of these phrases are said when we think that men cannot control themselves, that they are victims of their own bodies. So how do we turn the tide? Just 18 months ago, something happened in my classroom that opened up my eyes. I was teaching an ambiguous poem that is hard to interpret. And I've had conversations about all kinds of things, about the CIA, lying to your parents, the mafia, the witness protection program, alien abductions. From the back of the room, a freshman girl spoke with an assurance I almost never hear. Miss Norman, this story is about rape. And from the front, a boy interrupted her. Miss Norman, did you hear about that football player? He was convicted of rape, but that girl was asleep. How could that be rape? I was stunned. How could having sex with a woman who cannot consent to it not be rape? My students are smart and curious. They are kind and well-meaning. They can tell you about Shakespearean sonnets and the structures of them, the power in Animal Farm and how it's an allegory. They can tell you about the bias of any news media I have ever put in front of them. And they could not tell me what rape was. They aren't the only ones who are confused. Many people do not understand basic ideas like consent, when it's okay to touch someone else, and what rape is. And if we don't know what rape is, how can we be expected not to do it? We need to teach clearly and consistently that everyone is in charge of their own body. And then we need to practice. If everyone is in charge of their own body, then a girl can wear a miniskirt and not expect to have her butt grabbed. And a boy can report sexual assault and not have his masculinity questioned. I couldn't help it is never a choice because you can always help it because you are always in charge of your own body. If everyone is in charge of their own body, when a kid tells you to stop tickling them, you stop, even if they're still giggling. When I come home from work, I cannot expect that my girls will greet me with a hug and a kiss. Now, they have to say hello, because acknowledging someone when they walk in the door is the polite thing to do. But I don't get to dictate how my kids greet me with their bodies. If everyone is in charge of their own bodies, when someone says no to any sort of advance, you stop. And continuing to pursue that person is not romantic. It's just creepy and gross. If everyone is in charge of their own bodies and you are involved in a sexual situation and you don't know whether the person wants to continue, you ask. And it isn't lame. It's respectful and therefore kind of romantic. You see, the conversation in my room didn't end with people being confused about what rape is. Instead, we got to talk about enthusiastic consent. The idea that everyone is in charge of their own bodies and only an enthusiastic yes means yes. My students loved the idea. My boys were finally less confused about the opposite sex. There wasn't any gray area, and they knew what they were supposed to do next. My girls were completely empowered about the idea that maybe they could do something with their body because they wanted to, not because of what someone would or would not say. Rape culture is terrifying. The statistics are big and scary. But the solution is so simple, it just might work. Everyone gets to be in charge of their own body, and we should all teach and act accordingly so that no one gets confused. I'll go first. My name is Abby Norman, and I'm in charge of my own body.